Now, the seasons are coming up, and people always wonder when, we're always pushing things, getting things done on the farm, whether it's filling water holes, putting up stands, clearing shooting lanes, putting out cameras, whatever. When do you stay off your land? And that's always a question of kind of a balance of risk reward. Well, I want to get this done. I want to clear this stand location because it's important. I didn't have time, pushing, like everybody in life, and then when is that drop dead time you can go in there? I want to focus on 3 thoughts and things you have to consider of when you should go into a stand and when you shouldn't. And it really revolves around what I look at and I call weeks of forgiveness. Now, what I mean by that is I've always looked at that conservatively, you're in a 3-week to 4-week window of forgiveness with a mature buck. It says you spook a mature buck, that's the last time you get a chance at them. You ruined your hunt for the entire season. And we'll talk about that because I believe that's the case in a lot of cases, because that mature buck isn't on your land for 3 months out of the season, day in, day out. He'll be there for periods of time. But I look at it like, as long as you let's just pick one window to look at. Let's just say 3 weeks. Maybe 2 weeks on the short side if you're in more of a fantasy land state where they take a little bit more hunting pressure. Maybe in a spot where it's big suburban areas. I think, near Detroit area, there's some really good hunting. The deer are used to a lot of people. They can get bumped around daily and be back a day later, 2 days later. But in typical hunting conditions, 2 weeks in a normal fantasy land state, maybe 4 weeks in a really remote area where they're not used to a lot of pressure. Well, let's just look at 3 weeks. Think about 3 weeks. So let's say you have stands to clear and you have work to do. Well, if you're not planning to hunt for 3 weeks, then you're okay. You can get down there. This water hole is an example right here. We neglected to fill this water hole immediately after this tub, this 300-gallon tank was installed. And that was kind of a bummer, because then what happened when we did get a bunch of rain that would have just complemented some water that we put in it, it actually washed out on this high side and lifted the tub out over here. So it was sticking out of the ground, and we had to come down here and fix it. And then we got married, Jen and I, last Saturday. We had over 200 people here. We had the reception here at the house. It was awesome. Right, Dylan? We had fun.
It was a party.
It was fun. And we had a great wedding, a little white church around here, and pretty awesome. But we had a lot to pull together to get here. And even just this time of year with planting and everything, we pushed this off a couple weeks from what we wanted to. So we were actually out here this morning. It's Wednesday. Our season opens on Saturday. So you start thinking about that 3 weeks of forgiveness. Well, for one thing, we're not hunting in this location until the rut, probably late October. So we're a long ways away from that. So that's one thing you have to consider. Think about that 3 weeks first. That's not the consideration. Let's just look at that as the concept as, when deer are going to be back, when that mature buck's going to feel comfortable coming back to your land after you spook them. Let's say 3 weeks. For example, we had LL Beams this morning. He was on a food plot right up there crossing. I can just picture him bedding right over there down here. If we spooked him this morning, he's one of our target bucks. Maybe he won't come back and bed in that area. At least he probably wasn't bedding right here. But we have a little window we have to wait to be really safe. We know he'll be back, and that's that 3 week window. So I look at it like down here in this stand location, we're not hunting definitely at this point for at least 5 to 6 weeks, maybe 7 would be that first time we get down here. We're not hunting this during the season. We want to be down here during the rut. We don't want to have the mature buck, if they're bedding down here, beat us to the stand in the location before we get here and we spook them out, on October 15th, for example. I want him out rutting somewhere, running around during a cold front morning, and then he comes down here at like 8 or 9 in the morning at the earliest. So that's one consideration. When are you hunting that stand next? Number 2, what's going on with your neighbors? Do you have the potential of spooking that deer to your neighbors that are hunting? For example, down here, LL Beams, Ocho up top where we drove through to get down here. Those bucks are pretty safe because they get locked into very specific sides of our land going throughout the season. And because Ocho is a 5-year-old and LL Beams is a 6-year-old, then we have years of history knowing where these bucks are going to be during the season. We get feedback from the neighbors if they're over there. I'd say LO beams is the one I have to worry about the most. Getting over to Chad's property, I could see Chad shooting him opening weekend. By the time you see this, maybe Chad already shot him. But the bottom line is, I feel pretty comfortable, especially with him getting locked into the property more and more each day. Hardhorn, we've seen him a lot now, that LO beams would be safe. We still have about a quarter mile that way before we get off our property. So he's got a lot of acres that he can choose to call home if he wants to here, even if we spook him. So first consideration, when am I going to hunt it? Second consideration, am I going to spook that deer off to the neighbors? And third, what is my habitat window? And you really have to be very critical of yourself in this, of your land. You might have great bean plots like they used to have here before we bought the land. They had 5 acres of beans. Most of the pictures of the bucks were in velvet because those beans were down to the dirt sometime in October. They had a lot of open timber. They didn't work on any bedding areas. They didn't have switchgrass edging. They didn't have the screening. And so the later it got into the season, the less likely they were to see deer. So if the season opens on September 14th like it does this year, and my best window to hunt is September 14th to the first week of October, that means I need to be off this land by about August 20th. I want to give myself a good 3 weeks before hunting season. That means right now on September 9th, 10th?
The 11th.
11th. Whoa, time's flying. Okay. Got married on the 7th. Look at that. But September 11th, that means that we're way too late to be working here if my habitat window of cover, thick, high stem count cover that we've created all around the property throughout the last few years, cutting during the winter, we've cut probably 35 to 40 bedding pockets, a quarter acre to an acre and a half a piece, evenly spread out throughout the property. We're doing really well now. That's one consideration. What's your habitat window of cover? You know, maybe you have really, really thick cover, maybe a lot of conifer mixed in your cover, and when you attract deer is more towards middle of November to December. Well, then you're fine, you know, working on the property right now, especially if you're not hunting soon and you're not spooking deer off to your neighbors. The other big consideration of habitat is food. And again, going back to those beans, awesome early season food, then they're down to the dirt, and then there's nothing. Chestnuts. I was at a client property down in West Virginia. He had 40 chestnut trees, incredible bumper crop, and they're all gone before the start of the season in West Virginia. So he couldn't even utilize the main food source on his property. He had spent years working on those, and all of a sudden he got to the realization 12 years later, 14 years later, yeah, these are cool trees, they're growing really well, but they're missing the mark of food for when I can actually hunt on the property. So that involves a different critical eye than just hunting strategy. It's when is your habitat peaking? How does that relate to how you can hold deer on your property, hold mature bucks, hunt mature bucks, advance them to the next age class when they're young? And so that goes back to all the habitat stuff we teach here, where you're better off your land peaking in mid-November than mid-August, mid-June. Because typically you don't hold those bucks even during the season for 3 months or 4 months straight, let alone looking at an entire year. You really have a tight window where they're going to be on your property. So think about that window. And think about, if I'm out on the property, maybe my window is more mid-November. Maybe it's late October, maybe it's middle of October. And we're here in the middle of September. I don't have to worry about them spooking to other people. I'm not going to hunt till mid-October. Maybe a rutcation. You know, we hunt when we want to as far as based on the weather. I hunt only weather patterns. I've done that since the early 90s. That's the way I hunt. That's the way I shoot my bucks. In fact, just a quick pro tip. You look at Weather Underground, look up the monthly forecast. You can look up any year. You can do this on your phone. Look when you shot a buck, and almost all my bucks are shot when the temperature dips, the wind speeds dip. I shoot my buck right there. Not 3 days later, 2 days later when the pressure is really super high. I shoot it right when those conditions change. You have that dip, and then I shoot them right in that location. So I'm hunting the weather. I might not hunt more than you time in the stand, but I hunt very, very precise, great days to sit, as opposed to looking at, well, I'm going to hunt 9 days of a rutcation, maybe a couple long weekends here and there, and I have to enforce myself to sit during those times. I instead pick my best time to hunt. But a lot of you can't do that. You have jobs, you have to put in vacation time 9 months in advance, 10 months in advance, whatever it might be, January, February. and then you go hunt. In that case, if your rutcation isn't until the first 10 days of November, maybe the last couple days of October, and you're not going to be hunting until that time, there's no risk of pushing those deer off to your neighbors, your habitat is peaking at that time and that's why you're hunting at that time, then by all means, go in there October 10th, work on your land. October 5th, give yourself that 3-week window and you're going to be fine. So for a lot of you, if you're not hunting till your rutcation, we're out here September 11th, you might still have a month that you can work on your habitat projects, and especially your tree stands, clearing lanes, water holes. We actually have, and I use this as an example because Wes and Caden were down here working on this morning. But you can see our redneck that's back there. We installed that about a month ago. And we have to clear a lane right out where Dylan's at. We have to clear a lane right here and then a couple limbs over there. And we'll be set to go. With coming down here to have to work on this anyways, we're just doubling up our intrusion. And again, it's September 11th. The earliest we'd hunt here would be some really, really nice cold front morning, October 25th, October 24th, somewhere around there. But I can't see her hunting here any earlier than that. So we're at least 5 to 6 weeks before we get down here. That works for that 3-week window of forgiveness that bucks will give you. And those are some things to consider for when is that last time you should stay on your property. And if you don't care about target bucks, you just want to shoot any deer, any buck, then just ignore all this stuff, go to another channel. But this channel is about being a very good hunter, making very smart decisions when you go out to the woods, and trying to get the most out of your investment of time and money when it comes to water holes, stand locations, switchgrass, food plots, even scouting time on public land. You still have to make good decisions if you want to do your best and be the best hunter you can be this season and beyond. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. You're our best followers. You followed all the way to the end of the video. Really invite you to check out our website. We have our earthway spreaders for sale, great Christmas presents. We're booking clients right now, all 5 of us. So by the end of December, it seems early, but by the end of December, our schedule will be booked for 2025. It's hard to believe. I'm already booked for December and most of January, February. We have our web classes, the Rut web class, how to design your whitetail property, and really important, hunting hills and thermals, understanding the wind. Those are great products on our site, all the books. Thank you so much for watching all the videos, buying the seed that you did this year. Really appreciate you.